Hi, I'm Raymond Neutra of the Neutra Institute for Survival Through Design, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Guild. Nowhere in the world celebrates modernism better than Modernism Week in Palm Springs, California. Every February, they have this Architecture and Design Festival, which used to only be a week, but lately it's been supersized to last 11 days. U.S. Modernist Radio is there again this year, interviewing nearly all of Modernism Week's keynote speakers, plus special guests at the U.S. Modernist Compound, which is within the very cool confines of the Hotel Skylark. Charles Phoenix is the ambassador of Midcentury Americana. From his wildly popular slideshows and lectures on life in the 50s to his sold-out double-decker bus tours of Palm Springs, he is really a fixture at Modernism Week and a crowd favorite. Later, George sits down with the king of the Viewmaster, that iconic plastic toy with those circular reels. Martin Knowles spoke at Modernism Week on Viewmaster keeping it real, R-E-E-L, in 3D for 80 years, and launched new reels featuring mid-century modern architects like Hugh Kaptur, Bill Krisel, Donald Wexler, and E. Stewart Williams. This was my second year in Palm Springs for Modernism Week, and I should mention that some of the most impressive structures you'll see, they aren't architectural. The San Bernardino and Santa Rosa mountain ranges are right there with you as you pop around the Coachella Valley. Everywhere you turn, these quiet sentinels are your companion, part of every design and setting. The desert, the mountains, for the locals, they're just part of the landscape. But for us Easterners who come to town in Mod Week, those mountains surrounding Palm Springs make the experience complete.
And speaking of mountains, one of my favorite destinations is to go up on the Palm Springs Tramway.
Oh, yeah.
Which takes you about 8,000 feet up the side of the mountain. This tramway was built in the 1960s and has been refurbished several times. The top station and the bottom station where the cables connect were designed by two different mid-century modern architects. So not only do you get to experience the voyage up there to the top, but the buildings at each end. There's a great restaurant at the top and lots of viewing spots. And there's about a 30-degree difference in temperature between the valley floor and the mountain up top.
You have to pack a wardrobe for a trip on the tramway.
You do, because it could be 70 degrees down the valley floor, and you get up to the top, and there's still snow on the ground. It's pretty fascinating. If you'd like to go with us in February 2021 to Modernism Week and stay at the U.S. Modernist Compound, email George at usmodernist.org. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Nichiha.com/U.S. Modernist and by Modernist realtor Angela Roll.
In her ongoing imaginary life, Modernist realtor Angela Roll supported herself from the age of 12 through black market carpentry and off-the-books house flipping, roaming the streets of Los Angeles with a nail gun and a Home Depot gift card of questionable origin. She rose to fame as a modernist renovator while keeping a 4.2 average and dating Jordan Catalano on the side.
My so-called life.
After high school graduation following a wild night involving goat cheese, Krisel, an inflatable kiddie pool, Sunset Boulevard, and a SWAT team, Angela was recruited to study architecture at SCI-Arc on a full boat scholarship. Amazingly, she declined and instead followed a different Catalano, architect Eduardo, into Boston. After studying at MIT, spending years in nutrient and sleep-deprived architecture studios, tortured with balsa wood and styrofoam, rarely seeing the light of day, she moved to North Carolina and became one of the top modernist real estate agents. With specialized design training and her trusty nail gun, she advises buyers and sellers of modernist houses on everything from appropriate pricing to how to talk to a SWAT team.
Very useful.
Yeah, one member at a time. Angela Roll is your special agent. Reach her at angelaroll.com. That's ROEHL or 919-995-0550.
Thank you, Tom. You can't come to Modernism Week without hearing about Charles Phoenix. He's been called the ambassador of Americana. From his wildly popular slideshows and lectures on life in the 50s to his sold-out double-decker bus tours of Palm Springs, he's an entertaining crowd favorite, an impressive encyclopedia of mid-century popular culture, and a well-known collector of mid-century stuff you would have seen in your great-grandmother's house, stuff that was featured in magazines of the era. You can access many of the period's design magazines at our site, usmodernist.org/library. Let's go now to that interview from Palm Springs, as I sit down with Charles Phoenix poolside at the Hotel Skylark, a 1960s vintage hotel. I ran into you the first time going on one of your bus tours.
Are we already rolling?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was fabulous. And what was so great about it is besides being wonderfully entertaining, you really know a lot. I mean, you've got a deep knowledge of these houses and their occupants that you've developed over time.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. You say I know a lot. People are really starting to say that to me. Like, okay, for example, the photo curator of the Getty came over to my house recently. He called me up and he said, I want you to come to the Getty. I want to show you some stuff we have. And then I want to come to your house to see your photo archive. I collect other people's old Kodachrome slides. I have for... it's been 28 years now. So I have a massive archive. It's in beautiful order. Everything's wonderful. I draw from those for my live shows that I do live on stage around the country, talking about various subjects, style and design, local culture, whatever it is, the built environment, blah, 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 fashion, transportation. And he said, you know a lot. He says, you can talk about the architecture, you can talk about the transportation, and you can talk about the fashion. And he said, that's a rare combination of three elements. And I never really thought about it. It's just, to me, they all go hand in hand.
Well, of course they do, but not everybody has all that in their head.
Right. And I guess that I have dedicated my life to the study of this, to mid-century American pop culture style and design. And I've written several books on it. My latest is Holiday Jubilee, which covers the pop culture history of the holidays.
Okay.
And that's fun. And holidays are very mid-century.
They are.
Of
course.
They're very retro, as I call them. But yeah, I enjoy the architecture, I enjoy the transportation, and I enjoy the fashion. And then, all the furniture and all that stuff too.
Right.
So I have a visual sense. I'm a visual person. I have a photographic memory. And I'm very interested in mid-century American style and design. I mean, and foreign as well. But American is my specialty.
And what we're doing at U.S. Modernist is just focusing in on all modernism from the 20s when it really sort of hit the ground through the new ones today.
And I learned all of this kind of, the way it kind of came to me. I was born on a used car lot, not literally, but I might as well have been.
In Upland, California,
in
right?
Ontario, California, which is right below Upland, California. Upland is the upland of Ontario, California, which Ontario is about halfway between Palm Springs and Los Angeles. So anyway, I grew up on a used car lot, and the fins on the cars, I mean, to me as a small child, I just found the styling of them euphoric. To look at them, they made me happy. And so it started with the cars, and from there it kind of evolved into, I started thrift shopping at the age of 14. And I always loved going to shopping malls and seeing trends, and even as a young child, I could see the trends change in fashion. It was something I liked watching, and I could see it because season to season to season, like I remember the day my grandmother said to my mother, we're going to have to hem our skirts another inch this year up.
Yeah.
It's like stuff like that. It's just, I don't know why I paid attention to that. And then Disneyland was a massive influence in the realm of visual style guide association. I mean, Disneyland makes it really easy for you. You go there, it's Main Street USA, it's Frontierland, it's Tomorrowland, it's Fantasyland, and it's Adventureland. So these are style guides. As a child, I was already programmed to kind of understand what a style guide is. And from there, that made it so easy for me to look at anything and go, it's that style, whatever the style is. I mean, I don't know every style. Like, I don't know, some ancient styles and stuff like that, but I can kind of put my finger on it most of the time. But mid-century style guide, I mean, there's so many, but I just happen to really be interested in kind of knowing them all.
One of my guests the other day, we were talking about slides, and we were trying to remember the sound.
Slides?
of the carousel slide projector.
Uh-huh.
Can you do an impression of the slide projector sound?
That's so funny. No one's ever asked me to. It's like, or something like that, the way it drops in.
Like-
I mean, I don't use a slide projector anymore because
Right, it's
technology.
PowerPoint, yeah.
But yeah, there's different kind of the carousel projector.
The Kodak ones.
The Kodak carousel. I think that came to the world in '61, I think, the carousel projector.
Okay.
But, it just goes like, or something like that.
Like,
Oh, you think it's more like that? Well, that sounds like you're starting to do a rap or something.
Yeah. Well, it has, you could, somebody's got to do the Kodak carousel rap.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I guess it should be me.
It should be you.
I could do it. I could do it.
There's your next
Thank
show.
you. That's such a good idea.
You are welcome. You can have all that.
Ooh, I like it. I do.
Because that sound is what kids heard in school.
Yeah.
When the Kodak carousel would come in for the, guest speaker or the teacher or something, hear that little sound going. It's just like the sound of the 16 millimeter projector has been used for, decades to signify retro.
There's also that film strip sound. Doop.
Yeah.
When you had to change the... old technology. It's so funny. I mean, everything evolves so much. It's interesting to see the evolution of the interest in mid-century because, growing up in California, I can tell you that we had loads of mid-century here, of course.
Yes.
As there was in some other places as well. I mean, particularly Florida and everywhere. But by the 70s, what we're now calling mid-century was pretty much like, thought of as tacky.
Oh, it was over.
Tacky, and they remodeled everything. I mean, and I understand remodeling. I get it. I get trends and I get styles and I get that architecture is like the same thing as fashion. Architecture is fashion.
Right.
And things go in and out, the materials change, the idea.
The hymns go up and down.
Right, exactly. The hymns go up and down. So we're kind of in a place now where I guess anything goes, like fashion barely even exists. And architecture barely exists anymore. I mean, we're in the Starbucksification of everything. They want everything to look like Starbucks.
We have a Starbucks in North Carolina, in Greensboro, I believe. It's one of the few that was kind of individually crafted to a new plan. And it doesn't look like a Starbucks. It looks like a very 2020 modernist building.
Good.
And it just pulls people in. They just can't believe it's a Starbucks.
Good. Well, that's good to know. There's also a new one here in Palm Springs that's kind of architectural. So I'm not talking trash about I almost called it Stardust. Starbucks. They could have called it Stardust
Wouldn't
Coffee.
that be great?
Yeah,
Stardust Coffee.
I want them to change the name Stardust.
Okay.
But anyway, what we are here to talk about, I guess, is architecture.
It's architecture. But I want to know a little more about you because
Okay.
I'm fascinated by the fact that you have this photographic memory and you have this giant archive, which means that you've got that memory, all over your house, all over your brain. And you started these slideshows when?
Well, I started doing my live slideshows on stage in 1998.
Okay.
And I've been doing them ever since. So, I mean, I travel around the United States. I mean, I get hired by museums or civic theaters or corporate. And, I have quite a back pocket full of different subjects I can talk about. I like to tailor my show, when possible, to the towns that I go to. And as of the last, I don't know how many years, I started including my own personal travels that were, appropriate to the subject.
Yeah.
Because I might go to somewhere that I don't have tons of old slides of. So I can go around and take pictures of things that interest me, that are historic in some way or another, or that I find interesting or amusing, or otherwise have enough talking points to, present to an audience. And I take pictures myself and add them in to my vintage imagery.
Now, the 50s and 60s particularly were a time where people were very hopeful and optimistic about the future. The future was full of technology. Things were going to be more convenient. You were going to travel places faster. You were going to make more money. It was all going to be great. It's a real different mindset from what we seem to have now, where the future is all bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really kind of take it there myself, but I'm kind of hardwired to be an optimist. But it is interesting. Corporate America was really pushing this thing called the future, and it was a very interesting time. The pop culture explosion that happened in the United States in the 50s and 60s was second in scale only to the Big Bang. Never before had a society fashioned such a over-the-top, out-of-this-world wonderland of wonders to live in. And the middle class was so empowered then, and the quality of products that the middle class was able to buy was just so great the quality and design. I mean, it was there for the middle class. I mean, so yeah, things have obviously shifted. And, I never really get into the then is better, now is better. I don't get into that at all. I don't even go there. I never kind of take it into that lane in my shows or in my performances or my talks or whatever at all. It's not even about that. What I'm trying to do is I'm just celebrating greatness. And also, frankly speaking, I'm earning a living. I mean, this is really what I know how to do. And just kind of I got hardwired in such a way that presenting my passion for mid-century American life and style on stage happens to be just kind of what destiny delivered me to do, I guess. So that's what I do. But I don't really get into it's worse or better or whatever. In fact, sometimes I even think like if we could go back to the 50s and 60s, first of all, we'd be overwhelmed by secondhand smoke. We forget about that. I mean, there's so many things that we would that we would run screaming from. But what we are not running screaming from is the built environment and product design. And like every era, there's some, junky stuff or whatever. But the amount of great things, the amount of things to talk about, it's just endless. I mean, look at cars, American cars. I mean, that's how I really started with the cars. So every year, virtually, most of them would change body style. I mean, for years this happened. And it's just such I find it fascinating and interesting and plenty of things to draw amusing observations from.
You also, besides reporting on the past and showing people this delightful era, you're also doing a little original research. I understand that you put together a very unique pie at some point.
Oh, the pie stuffed cake, yes.
Yes.
Part of my shtick has been, and these recipes are included in my Holiday Jubilee book, which came out last October. Yes, the churpumple, cherry, pumpkin, and apple. Those are the 3 pies that I baked into 3 layers of cake. The cherry goes into a white layer of cake. The pumpkin goes into a yellow layer. And the apple pie goes into a spice layer. And you bake the pies in the cakes. First you have to bake the pies, then you put them in the cake batter, then you bake that. The pies don't know they've been baked twice, so don't worry. And then you stack and frost.
No pies have been tortured in the production of this cake.
Right, exactly. So then you stack and frost with cream cheese frosting, and it's absolutely delicious. But yeah, I got into cooking because of the images that I saw of food, like people's dinners that they would take pictures of in the 50s and 60s. And the first thing that kept appearing over and over in slides, the first trend of food that I noticed was ambrosia.
Really?
Which is fruit cocktail, Cool Whip.
The marshmallows,
yeah,
right?
And marshmallows and coconut, yeah. So I didn't grow up eating ambrosia. Nobody in my family made it, and I think my mother didn't like it or something. That's how we didn't have it. But I found it fascinating. So at a show once, I said, I'm going to serve ambrosia in the intermission since we've now seen 3 slides with ambrosia on the plate. And everyone loved that, and they gobbled it right up. So that was the beginning of what I called the Charles Phoenix Test Kitchen. And so I started making up recipes using heritage brand name products. And I really love the history of American pop culture in general. So food products totally fit in there.
Yes.
I mean, like,
because everyone accessed those.
Right. I mean, to me, like, the Jolly Green Giant and Betty Crocker and Pepperidge Farm. Was there really a Pepperidge Farm? Hidden Valley Ranch. Where's the
ranch?
No, there's all they all have a story to tell, and they all are these homespun products that got bought by big corporation, and then they, pimped them into everybody's supermarket. So I love all that. Jiffy cornbread mix.
Jiffy Pop and
Jiffy Pop. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Jiffy Pop, the one that when you pop it on the stove,
the big foil thing.
That's the most over-the-top mid-century modern product in the grocery store. And the other thing where, of course, whipped cream, that started in about 48 with those aerosol cans were developed to spray insecticide.
Oh.
And then someone said, let's put whipped cream in it. So that worked out well for the whipped cream people. That was Ready Whip. And then also, of course, spray cheese, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about, those biscuits. Poppin' Fresh, you hit them on the counter and that little canister kind of explodes in a spiral.
Yeah.
But, I can't find online anywhere what year that Poppin' Fresh canister was introduced.
All right, listeners, this is one of your research challenges.
Please.
Help us find when the Poppin' Fresh canister was developed, and we will get this information to Charles Phoenix, who will incorporate it into his show.
Thank you. Yes, I will. It's Pillsbury. I mean, they're the ones that did it. So some mastermind chemist, technologist of some sort figured out how to...
Food scientist, I guess.
Well, a packaging scientist.
Okay.
And a food scientist. I mean, it's kind of...
They were working together late at night.
It had to be.
Right?
I know. It's great.
The
I
year
love it.
1950.
So it kind of never ends. The mid-century is my muse. That's what I say. The mid-century is my muse. I mean, I'm willing to go down so many rabbit holes. Now, I don't get into war.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a peacetime historian. I don't get into war at all. I don't know much about it at all. I like to live on the happy side of the street, not the fighting side of the street.
Right.
So you could ask me all day about, the war, and I can't tell you much. And no disrespect implied or intended to those who were involved at all. It's just not my study.
It's not your beat.
It's not the lane I'm in as far as the study of it all.
Now, one of the other mid-century phenomenons that came along that was also very optimistic was science fiction. When Star Trek came along in, I think, 66, 67, it was on for 3 seasons and projected an Earth that had kind of solved all its earthly problems. The government worked, people weren't poor, they had all the conveniences, they were sending spaceships out into the world. I mean, that was a big extension of this hopefulness and optimism that came along. And TV really kind of, it was fun to watch that kind of thing, wasn't it?
Well, yes. I never really watched Star Trek that much. My brother watched it, so that meant that I couldn't like it because I couldn't like the shows he liked and he couldn't like the shows I liked. But I respect Star Trek, and I did watch it for a summer season. Every night it was on at midnight, like the summer of 85. And I watched it then, and I love it. I love the style and design of it. But what I do know about Star Trek is that Lucille Ball, who was at the time the head of Desilu Studios.
Yeah, she produced it, right?
She's the one that green-lighted that show.
Oh,
so
okay.
without Lucille Ball, we would have never had Star Trek. So obviously it has gone on to be this vast, massive brand.
Empire
of a brand, yeah. So Lucy kind of gave it the original green light.
Because at the time, Gene Roddenberry, the producer, pitched it as a Western in space. That was the idea, because Westerns were really big on TV then. There were a dozen of them, 24 of them. Gunsmoke had been running for the longest time, and everyone wanted to replicate the success of Gunsmoke.
That's true. And Bonanza might have debuted, I think debuted in 59, but Bonanza was the first show on television in color.
Really?
Yeah. So color television, speaking of all things, I mean, we're going around the merry-go-round of a lot of subjects here, I know. I remember the first big season of color television was 66. That's when a lot of shows went from black and white, like Bewitched.
Yes.
Went
the
from black and white to
FBI
color.
was in color.
They all went, not all of the shows went to color, but that's the year that a lot of them made the leap, is 66. And I can remember in 1968, when I was like 5 years old, when we got a color television.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big deal. It was like the world went from black and white to color. It's like in that movie, The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a really big deal. I mean, this was our new technology.
Did you watch the moon landing on your color TV?
Well, thank you for asking. Just recently, my mother said, do you remember where we were when man landed on the moon? And I was 5 at the time. I said, no. She said, I can't believe you don't remember. Are you sure you don't remember? And I'm like, no. She said, we went to Disneyland and we watched it on a giant screen in Tomorrowland.
Wow.
How could I not remember that?
Yeah.
It was so bad. But yeah, I mean, as I said, Disneyland was a massive influence. Growing up in Southern California, I mean, you almost couldn't avoid it. So that was a huge part of my education, is learning, as I said, about style guides. And that's really helped me in my studies all along.
How long have you been coming to Palm Springs to do the bus tours?
Well, I started coming to Palm Springs Modernism Week when it first started. I mean, it's been a while. It's been a long while.
15 years since it started?
15 years. Okay, so I've been here all the 15 years. At first, I started with book signings, and then finally I did a slideshow, and I've been doing the slideshows every year ever since. About 10 years ago, they moved me into the Annenberg Theater at the Art Museum, so I do that. And then the bus tours, I think this is maybe my 4th year.
Okay.
I think.
They're enormously popular.
Yeah, the bus tours, people love the bus tours, and they sell out right away. And it's a really good tour because it gives you the east, west, north, and south of town. We basically point out all the legendary, iconic landmarks and a lot of points in between and incredible neighborhoods like Twin Palms and the movie colony and, of course, Las Palmas. And, I mean, where do we begin? I mean, it's kind of endless. But with that said, it kind of reminds me of what I tell my people on the bus is that Palm Springs is like a theme park. That's why I call it Palm Springs Land.
Mm.
It is. And, going on that bus is like going on a ride.
It is.
It is.
It is absolutely like that.
So the whole world is like a great big theme park to me. Everywhere you go, there are attractions. They're the places to, go. I mean, I'm good at kind of zeroing in on these things wherever I go, what town I go to. I mean, if you go to North Carolina or whatever, it's got to be like a theme park. There's all kinds of attractions.
We do have a couple things there.
A lot of attractions to see. I know it.
It is.
But I've never been to North Carolina, I'm sorry to say.
Well, there
Or
are
south.
direct flights from L.A. now.
Are there really?
You can actually land right in our state.
How's all the furniture making going there? Because we know thank you for all the furniture, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome.
Lots of it became like really valuable stuff.
Very much so.
I know.
The High Point Furniture Market is still a big deal twice a year. All the hotel rooms within 30 miles fill up because the entire world descends on this place.
So what are some of the biggest, most famous names? Is Drexel out of there?
I believe so. I know that, like anything, the markets have had to adapt. So what was really more strictly furniture is now a lot of different things. It's lighting, it's different kinds of wares, interiors, and so forth to complement all of that. Because just like in the clothing industry, we lost many mills in North Carolina because that business moved overseas. We've also lost some furniture business in North Carolina that has moved elsewhere.
Makes sense.
But the state is really now known for this great quality of life. People are always moving to North Carolina to retire or to live. We have this huge biotech. We have Research Triangle Park. And all of my listeners who are from North Carolina know this kind of stuff. But Charles, when you visit, I'll have to come and show you around.
I would love to. I love it. I love to travel. I love to go experience cities that I've never been to before. When I travel, I love to find what I can't find in my own town of Los Angeles. We don't travel to see what's the same as where we've come from.
Right. We want it different.
We want to see what's unique about every town. I mean, that's why you travel, is to see what's unique about a place, not who cares about what's the same. I mean, you can go to Starbucks everywhere. Who cares?
Yeah.
But let's see what's unique. Palm Springs has a lot of things that are very, Palm Springs kind of only.
You can catch your bus tours if you come to Modernism Week. How can people find out information about the shows that you're doing?
The shows that I'm doing are on my website, charlesphoenix.com, as are my books. The latest is Holiday Jubilee, and the one before that was Addicted to Americana.
Okay.
Which I say I am. Good. And
is there a rehab for that?
Rehab? I hope not.
Okay, good.
I'm never going to lose this. No, I'm so glad. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, I say, I feel so blessed that have something that I'm so interested in learning about every day. It's my entertainment, like researching all of this information and discovering new places and stories of places and things and all the stuff. That is my entertainment. I don't watch television at all. I have nothing against it. I respect it. I don't go to the movies very often. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I like documentaries, but I don't seek entertainment because my work
Your world is
entertains
that.
me.
Yeah. There's a joy that you get from that.
The work entertains me, and finding the stories entertains me rather than going and sitting through a story. I mean, again, I respect the medium of film and television a lot, and I have a lot of friends that work in it, and they all get mad when I say, no, I didn't see that movie.
Yeah.
But I said I'm busy like going through my own image collection and creating a show for some place that I'm going to do a show at.
So last question, and I have to ask this as an archivist. Who's going to take care of your collection once you're gone? Where's it going?
Well, that's funny that you mentioned that because I haven't really thought of that. But just the other day when the Getty came over, I was like, I think they're maybe doing a little, looking at it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Succession plan.
Right. I mean, none of us live forever.
Right.
So life is brief. Enjoy it while you may. I don't know. I haven't really figured that out yet. But it's a really great collection of Kodachrome. I've been collecting 28 years. I have a librarian who takes care of keeping everything in perfect order, which she does, thankfully, because I am way less organized than she is. And she knows there are hundreds of categories of where we put the slides. All collections get edited.
Right.
And the age of the collection is like 38 is about the earliest slides. And then it kind of dwindles a little tiny bit into the 80s, but it kind of peters way out in the 70s. I mean, the bulk of what I collect and what I find is 50s and 60s. And that's really what I'm looking for anyway. Not that I'm against other time periods. It's just that is the heyday.
That's your focus.
That's my focus, A, and that's the heyday, B, of Kodachrome slides. So it all works out perfectly. I mean, Kodachrome is the ultimate medium for anything ever to have been documented in.
Well, Charles, thank you for joining me and spending some time here by the pool. And please let me know when you make that little projector sound into a backbeat for something.
I love that.
Okay.
You inspired me. Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks, Charles.
You've been listening to George Smart talking with Charles Phoenix. And now, a moment of reflection from Nietzsche.
Beauty, love, durability, designed to last for years to come, bringing you peace and tranquility. You feel relaxed, knowing your house can easily achieve any exterior look and any color. Wood, concrete. Your house loves feeling this good. And you love feeling this good. Nietzsche, 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 Nietzsche. Say it with me. Nietzsche. Advanced engineering. Nietzsche, Nietzsche. Durability, textures, finishes, and colors. Visit Nietzsche.com/US Modernist. Nietzsche, Nietzsche, Nietzsche. That's N-I-C-H. Wait for it. A look you'll love. Nietzsche.
As a kid, everyone knew the Viewmaster. I had a couple when I was growing up. It was kind of like a primitive virtual reality headset, a plastic thing that sort of looked like binoculars mated with a brownie camera. You'd put these cheap paper film reels into your Viewmaster, and they showed you pictures in 3D. You'll advance through what was essentially a short movie in about 10 slides. Now, there was no sound and only the barest of text on the slides to keep the story going. Yet the Viewmaster became one of the most iconic toys in history. And we catch up on that history with Martin Knowles, the master of Viewmaster.
Master of Viewmaster, yes.
Should be trademarked. As part of his Modernism Week lecture, Keeping It Real in 3D for 80 years. We join Martin and George Smart poolside from, you guessed it, the U.S. Modernist compound.
You're here to talk about this thing that I really had forgotten. And once I started thinking about it, it just really hit me like a ton of bricks, which is the Viewmaster. I remember getting my first Viewmaster. And this was like the internet of its time. I mean, it's such a simple device. But you had this ability to create this little mini movie. And what was it, 10 scenes?
7.
7 scenes?
Yep, 7, no more, no less.
Okay, 7 scenes, you would get the plot of something. And it was just fascinating. I can remember my parents got me the first one, which I think I broke because they were a little flimsy at the time. I mean, I guess they make them in better shape now. And then, more and more of these reels that you would pop in there, and then we would take them in the car. And I remember that you could put different light sources behind them, like whether it was a light bulb or the sun or a fluorescent light would completely change the color of how you viewed it. So for those of you that don't know what a Viewmaster is, Martin, kick us off.
So the Viewmaster is one of those iconic American mid-century design icons that most of us, because they were so common, don't realize is actually iconic. It was invented by a German immigrant who came over here as a kid and ended up settling in Portland. And by chance, he and one of the folks who was responsible for one of the largest one-hour photo service bureaus for the Portland area at the time met up, and they basically started doing 3D postcards. and things basically grew from there. And
Like the old stereoscopes?
yeah, exactly. So the problem that Wilhelm Gruber wanted to solve was he was into 3D
That sounds like a
photography.
Die-Hard villain.
Yeah, Wilhelm Gruber. Well, he actually did change his name later on to William Gruber. He got in trouble with the FBI, but that's another story for another time.
All right.
But he was into stereo photography, and at the time, stereoscopes were the only way to view stereo photos, and he wanted to make something that was much more convenient that you could carry around and all that. And that was the time when 16 millimeter Kodachrome film was new. And he got the insight that 16 millimeter Kodachrome film would be the perfect thing to make a stereoscope out of. And he ended up with an elegant and very simple solution to this, which has actually been unchanged since 1939. So any Viewmaster reel that you have will work with any Viewmaster viewer, which is pretty amazing because I can't even get digital files that are more than a decade old to read, and good luck in making an iPhone charger work more than a year.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, he ended up producing what is an absolutely simple and very elegant and very durable piece of industrial design.
Did this go right into the children's world first, or was it used for industry, or where did it start off?
Mr. Gruber saw it first as an educational tool for adults, and he was starting off with a lot of scenic things, so hiking around the Oregon coast and then later on the national parks and all of that. His business partner, Harold Graves, thought of it more as a kid's toy, and there was a competing interest called TrueView, and they'd produced a viewer out of the East Coast, and they had a license for Disney. And so by the 50s, Viewmaster actually bought TrueView to buy the rights to make reels for Disney.
Yeah.
And from that point on, it became known much more as a kid's toy. But in the early days, it was originally set up as an educational tool. And the U.S. military also ended up using it as such during World War II.
How do you use a Viewmaster for the military?
Well, it turns out that Viewmasters are a perfect way to teach things like anti-aircraft range estimation because it's 3D. And there were also reels that were produced for identifying friendly versus unfriendly aircrafts.
Okay.
And the Viewmaster company actually kept themselves going during World War II by producing reels for the U.S. military. And they produced about 1 million of them, and there are about 100 different reels on those topics and any number of other things which are actually still classified. And so soldiers got a chance to use Viewmasters.
Classified from World War II still?
Yes, still. Yep. There's parts of that project that we still have no idea about and that have been lost to the sands of time. But soldiers,
So they're in a secret government warehouse somewhere?
Yeah, someplace in a bunker.
Okay, all right. I assume you collect these as well as talk about them, right?
I collect a little bit, but my interest in Viewmaster is actually relatively recent compared to some people who have huge collections.
Okay.
I actually got my start sort of here at Modernism Week. I was cleaning out my grandmother's house a few years ago. She has lived up in Idlewild for her entire life until she passed on last year. And I ran into my parents' Viewmaster set and started looking through it. And of course, because I was here for Modernism Preview Week at the time, I said, well, wouldn't it be interesting to see if I can make my own reels? And as an architectural photographer, that got me thinking, because one of the core problems in architectural photography is how you represent 3D space.
Yeah.
And Viewmaster is sort of now a bit of a forgotten way to represent 3D space. And I started playing around with it and attracted the interest of folks down here and said, well, wouldn't it be fun to have Viewmaster reels of Palm Springs Modern houses and other structures? Because there are so many lovely things here in Palm Springs. And the rest is history.
Yeah. Would it be fair to compare the Viewmaster to something like Google Cardboard of a few years ago?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, the overall technology has changed, but the idea is still the same. You're still getting two slightly different photos, one to each eye.
Yeah.
And whether that's Viewmaster or stereoscopes or 3D glasses in the old or new movies or cardboard or your VR viewer, the idea is all the same. The only difference is in the technology used to deliver those two images to each of your eyes.
Is Viewmaster still producing these for Disney?
No, Viewmaster actually stopped producing reels back in 2013.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, they were still producing reels on machinery that Mr. Gruber had invented back in the 40s to do that. And the engineers said, we can't fix this because we can't figure it out. It's too clever. So Viewmaster reels are no longer being produced by Viewmaster.
Okay. But where do they come from?
The new ones that we're doing, they're produced by a company down in Portland who is being run by one of the photographers who used to work for Viewmaster in the later days. And they have a business where they're producing reproduction viewers and reproduction reels from digital files, which is what we use.
Okay. Can people buy new Viewmasters, or do they have to go to eBay to get them?
They can buy new Viewmasters that these folks are producing. Or if you're here in Palm Springs, you can buy them from the camp store at Modernism Week. You can also get the ones that I'm doing online at destinationpsp.com.
Okay. Viewmasters are not expensive. I mean, they're a pretty good deal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're simple devices, and the neat thing about them is that all Viewmaster reels are compatible with all Viewmaster viewers, all the way back to 1939.
So there's no problem with getting something that's not going to work.
Yeah, compatibility is a complete non-issue. You can buy a new viewer, and assuming that your reels are still in good shape, you can use the reels that you've had moldering away in your basement for the last however many years that they've been moldering away in your basement.
Are there any reels that are like super special, rare, can't find them anymore?
There are
limited edition?
Yes, there are actually quite a few. The reels from World War II certainly fall into that category. They're certainly hard to get. Wilhelm Gruber actually continued doing his own educational reels. In the dream that all of us photographers have, he was basically allowed to go and do his own projects in Viewmaster format, and he did. So he did a project called the Stereoscopic Atlas of Human Anatomy, which took him about a decade.
Okay.
And that's a series of reels of human anatomy, which was at the time considered to be a huge milestone in the history of medicine, and is still, even now, actually used by medical students, and scans of it are available online. He also did a series on mushrooms and Chinese art and vases and whatnot of the time. He was doing this in the early 60s. And those are very rare and hard to get, and they're absolutely lovely if you can find them.
I assume there's at least one annual convention of Viewmaster fans?
Sort of. Viewmaster fans are pretty well dispersed.
Okay.
But there's the National Stereoscopic Association, which is sort of the home for all things stereoscopic, and they do annual conventions.
Okay.
There's a lot of good internet resources as well. Viewmaster's own records are very spotty and were poorly recorded for archival purposes. And so a lot of people have crowdsourced information on how Viewmaster reels got updated over the course of the years and all of that. And so there's a couple of websites out there that, if you're trying to identify and date old reels, are very helpful.
Do you recall a couple of those we can tell people about?
One of them is 3D Stereo, and there's a site called the Ultimate Viewmaster Reel List.
Okay.
I don't have URLs, but I can forward those to you for the show notes.
Sure. Great. Well, thanks so much, Martin. This is fascinating. I love to be able to revisit this thing I loved so much as a child.
Yeah, it's been a labor of love for me as well, because how often do you get to use new technology to do something that you love and resurrect an old format?
Yeah. Well, have a great time at Modernism Week. Good luck on your talk.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
That was George Smart with Martin Knowles, the master of Viewmaster. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned as we bring more shows from 2020's Modernism Week in Palm Springs. If you want to hang out with us at the swanky U.S. Modernist compound at Modernism Week next year, February 2021, just email george@usmodernist.org. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Nichiha.com/US Modernist and by Angela Roll, your special agent for Modernist Houses, 919-995-0550. Okay, George, it's your turn.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation on now 7,500 significant modernist houses, and access 3 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. US Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studio in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by me and Robinson Earl. Carrie Cesarino researches guests while juggling 2 children, a bowling ball, a candle, and a chainsaw, all while salsa dancing with husband Adam. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm George Smart, and as the summer winds die down, I recall the cool, magical nights we spend each year at Modernism Week, sometimes at Frank Sinatra's pool in Palm Springs. We'll be back soon with another I Get a Kick Out of You, pocket full of miracles, for a once-in-my-life edition of U.S. Modernist Radio. Cheers.
Skull.